Yeah, okay, so I don't know if you noticed in my videos, I sound kind of spacey, trying to figure out words. Basically sound like a cat got my tongue. That's mostly because I have ADD and it's hard for me to concentrate sitting down, so I decided to try something new and do something standing up. Here, I'm standing up. Woo! Now I'm jumping. Great, let's try this. Welcome back to Unapologetic Book Nerd. It's been like a month. Has it been 2 months? It's been 2 months. Yes, my last video I made was in October before Halloween. Now it's December and I have no idea when this will get to you. Sorry. That's why today I decided to do something a little bit more different, and I would like to do a little mini rant, as to say, or at least in my opinion, a sophisticated argument. And my sophisticated argument is a defense of the chosen hero YA trope. You know what I'm talking about. The girl who thinks she's ugly, who is kind of the low tier of society, who one day wakes up with magical powers, has 4 guys in love with her, and there's this girl who hates her because she used to be the top bee queen, whatever, and blah, blah, blah. We read this 1,000 times before. It's been the plot of every other YA book and every other TV show and movie targeted to young girls. It is very simple, very classic, and basically everywhere. Also toxic. There's a lot of toxic kind of tropes that get recycled over and over again, and we in BookTube have seen a lot of arguments made against this trope. And I agree, this trope can be harmful, but I also don't think that it should end. This is my defense on the YA chosen hero trope, and why you shouldn't do away with it completely, and why we might actually still need it. And that's because of the Grishaverse by Leigh Bardugo, or Shadow and Bone as the first book is called. As you guys know, Leigh Bardugo is the very famous writer of the Grishaverse trilogy and the Six of Crows duology. The Grishaverse is a classic YA chosen hero trope example. It follows all the parameters. Ugly girl who gets powers, who thinks she's ugly but she's not really ugly, who's clumsy, who's kind of like a Mary Sue but not really like a Mary Sue, but a little bit like a Mary Sue. 7 guys in love with her and everyone hates her but also loves her at the same time, and she has difficult decisions to make. While on the other hand, Six of Crows, especially the second book, Crooked Kingdom, is almost a page-read of the chosen hero trope, at the same time standing alone away from it. But there's obvious criticisms of the chosen hero that we see in Shadow of Bone. It's funny because these books talk to each other, not because they're just in the same universe, but because they kind of headbutt with themes, and I think that's incredibly interesting and clever of the author. However, despite being so tropish, this book is, it's actually phenomenal and I love it. And I love the tropes because Leigh Bardugo reminds you that tropes don't kill your story. Cliches kill your story. Tropes could be used. Even if you follow them to the T and carry them throughout the entire trilogy, you can still deconstruct it. You can still play with them. You can still let them talk to each other. You can even page read them as they are written, but they don't have to be dooed away altogether. So let's start in the beginning. Alina is a poor girl who's a soldier, who's a map maker in particular, in the Ravakan army, which is very similar to Russia. Alina thinks she's plain looking. In other words, that's marketer speak of she's ugly, but she's not that ugly. She's still conventionally beautiful, but she's still relatable enough for teenage girls to think that their insecurities matches hers, so we're gonna pander to their insecurities. That's what we're gonna do. However, I really like Alina in the story because she's very authentic, even in times where she falls right under the trope. When she thinks that she's not pretty as other girls, she also doesn't let this stop her from making friendships with girls that she definitely feels insecure with, but doesn't feel necessarily threatened with. And then when we have that one character who hates her because Alina becomes the girl that everyone loves and she hates that attention being taken away from her, in particular this character named Zoya, that character actually gets her own arc and has her own world and dimension and respectability that isn't entirely tied to her insecurities of losing her power. And which makes her interesting because her progression with Alina, it grows and progresses from hating each other to respectable mutuals to actually being friends. And it's an interesting progression, but it's subtle. It doesn't need to be in your face. And that's what I really like about the kind of female relationships that we see in the book. It deconstructs the trope as they are being progressed. But in one of the most important parts of the book and the tropes that get deconstructed is actually the love triangle. So in this book, there are 3 guys in the love triangle. And that makes it more like a square, right? There's 3 because 2 couldn't be simple. You have the best friend that you've been in love with but doesn't love you back. You have the dark, mysterious guy. And then you have the charming, wisecracking guy that has complete swagger. All of these characters are different tropes of one of the YA chosen hero. Yet, they have their own arcs and dimensionalities and complications. I know I'm speaking in very vague terms. It's really hard to talk about the deconstruction of the tropes of these books without spoiling. But in a quick way, my favorite character of all the male characters is the Darkling. So getting a little bit spoily if you haven't read the first book, probably want to skip a little bit, like, 20 seconds or something, because I'm going to talk about the Darkling, right? The Darkling is the villain of the book. Although he's not written like that in the first book, it actually kind of twists you into thinking that he is going to be the nice guy, but he's not. And I'm fine with that, although it was, for me, totally predictable that he was going to be the villain, because his name is the Darkling. So, the Darkling. I love this character, and I think he's just absolutely interesting and dynamic, but also a terrible romantic choice for Alina, despite the fact that the entire fandom loves him and ships them together, because he's emotionally and physically and at one point sexually abusive. The way it's not written in a way that it's to your face abusive with capital letters and it's a Lifetime movie, but there's definitely some things that the Darkling does that should not be romanticized by the fandom at all. But what's interesting is Alina's desire to still be with him despite knowing this. Now, this doesn't make her stupid, this actually makes her completely realistic. The Darkling manipulates Alina into believing that he's the only one who will understand her, at the same time isolating her from her support group. This is classic abuse. But because of that, when she is separated from him, she still feels this pull for him because he is literally the only one who will understand her. He's the only one with a power like her. He's the only one who understands the kind of weight of immortality. But what he does when he's trying to convince her is that he takes her autonomy away from her. And there's still that sexual tension, which should be inappropriate, which should be weird and wrong and almost romanticizing to put between him and Darkling after he basically sexually assaults her. But no, it's actually kind of realistic, because Alina still feels that pull of manipulation that he put on her, making her believe that she's the only one that he will need, and in ways that might just be true. That desire still stays and actually makes her authentic, but her self-awareness of that is what diverges her from the cliches we see in other books. She knows that he is bad, she knows that she still has a desire for him, acknowledges it, and realizes that it's not okay. Not for her. There's an active participation of her part. In other YA tropes, we don't see this. And sometimes it quickly becomes to a romanticization of a toxic partner. And I hate that. I hate that. But I really like how Alina kind of confronts the Darkling and herself and her desire with him. There's a lot of deconstructions in the book, and I can talk about forever, but I really do agree that if you like the Six of Crows, I say read this. And if you're tired of reading the chosen hero trope, I say read this. Because I don't think, it's backwards. And the reason why I decided to do this video, defense of the chosen YA trope, is because this book reminded me why I read YA in the first place. And that's because unlike any other genre, anywhere, any other medium, is that there's not really a safe and organized place of mass communication where there's media and art that is specific for young teenage girls, that is for young teenage girls, that has young teenage girls as the center and as the protagonists, as the heroes. There's not a lot of that, and if you do see it in movies and television shows, it's because it's an adaptation from a YA novel. But you almost never just get a TV show where it's a young teenage girl as a protagonist. But for better or worse, there's a lot of toxic things that get fed to young girls through YA. It's also one of the reasons why I started this channel, because I wanted to talk about it. What I like about the Grishaverse is that it respects the YA chosen hero trope. A trope that BookTube has complained so much about, and for obvious and arguably good reasons. I also don't think it's the death of YA. I also think it's a good reason why YA is good, because it puts girls, young girls, as the heroes, as objectively important to the story, even if that the only thing that they did was wake up one day with powers. Their journey is what's more important than their origin story. It's also limiting, this idea that a young girl is important because she just wakes up one day with powers but doesn't work for the powers. It's not realistic, but it's not a completely useless trope, which is why I wanted to defend it by using the Grishaverse as a case study, because I actually think it's a good case study to absorb these tropes and to respect them. So don't hate the trope immediately. The Grishaverse is predictable, like all YA chosen heroes books. It is predictable, but it's not boring, and it's actually incredibly complicated with the politics and everything, because what matters is the details. You can stay within the trope, but you can deconstruct the trope with details and complications and three-dimensional characters. Tropes don't kill the story. The only thing that will be harmful is toxic cliches, such as the romanticization of emotionally abused relationships, which this book doesn't do. Even when sometimes it feels like it's going there, it doesn't do, which is why I feel like in this video, especially with this case study that I'm doing, I think it was important to talk a lot about Darkling and Alina. And for all the future writers out there who want to do YA, the YA chosen hero trope is a really good structured story. And just like Leia Verdugo, you can deconstruct the tropes and figure out where you can go with that. Yeah, I rambled a lot in this video. Also, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that the YA chosen hero trope should just die? Like, yeah, sometimes it could be written well, but sometimes it's just stupid and repetitive. Just let it burn and die. Go ahead and tell me. Let's argue it down below, because this is my defense of the trope, but you don't have to agree. Thank you for watching Unapologetic Book Nerd. Bye. Look, I have her signature. Look, she signed it. Oh my god. Yes, she signed it.